Grüß, willkommen in einem Fragens video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 23 of my equipment series of videos. This video will be covering the PLA Navy, specifically its naval vessels. As this topic is rather long, I've been forced to divide this up into several videos, this being part 2, which is covering frigates, corvettes and submarines. The PRC has been involved in an impressive build-up of its armed forces since 2010, if not before, and included in that build-out is its Navy. After the Air Force, this is the military arm which has had the greatest focus, and this can be seen in the number of PLA Navy vessels it currently possesses and that are still planned for launch. Continuing from my previous video, we're moving on to frigates. The PLA Navy has 46 guided missile frigates, of which the oldest vessel was commissioned in 1999. This is an impressively large and rather young force of guided missile frigates. Let's start with the Type 54B. The Type 54B is a class of guided missile frigates serving in the PLA Navy. It is a development of the Type 54A frigate. In the 2010s, Chinese military observers speculated a successor design was being developed to the Type 54A frigate, and it was designated Type 54B or Type 57. In the early 2020s, more confident intelligence sources suggested the successor to the Type 54A would be actually called the Type 54B. The first two hulls were laid down in 2022 at the Hadong shipyard and the Hangzhou shipyard in Shanghai and launched in 2023. The first frigate, Luo, was commissioned on the 22nd January 2025 at Qingdao. The second ship in this class, the Qinzhou, was secretly commissioned with its existence confirmed only on April 12, 2025. The Type 54A is a class of guided missile frigate serving with the PLA Navy. It was a development of the Type 54 frigate. Compared to its predecessor, the Type 54A has medium-range air defence capability in the form of Type 382 radar and vertically launched VLSs, which could launch HHQ-16 surface-to-air missiles. The first ship, Zhujiao, of the new Type 54A was laid down in 2005 and entered service with the PLA Navy in January 2008. Production was ongoing in 2023 with 35 ships in service by mid-2025, while the next batch of 5 ships commissioned from 2025 onwards, and a final batch of 10 ships under development or laid up or under construction, although this last batch may be built to the follow-on Type 54B frigate design, most likely. The Type 54 is divided into two classes, the Type 54 and the Type 54 Plus. 16 are standard Type 54 and the remainder the stretch version. The Type 54 was heavily influenced by the Lafayette-class frigates from France and so reflected the strategic and operational requirements of that country. The development of the Type 54A may have been driven by China's need to address high-intensity armed conflict. The Type 54A uses the same stealthy hull form as the Type 54. The forward launches for the HQ-7 short-range SAM missiles was replaced with a 32-cell vertical launch system for medium-range HHQ-16 SAMs and the Yu-8 anti-submarine rockets. The smaller main gun and the Type 730 close-in weapon system, CIWS, was also installed. Ships starting with the 17th vessel launched, Hangguang, was constructed with enhanced anti-submarine warfare capability, added variable depth and towed sonar array to its repertoire of systems, and the Type 1130 CIWS instead of the Type 730. These ships have been unofficially referred to as the Type 54A+. Type, or alternatively the Type 54A2 or modified Jiangkang 2. There are 19 Type 54A plus frigates with a further 5 under construction. The base Type 54, not the A or B, is a class of Chinese multi-role frigates that entered service in the People's Liberation Army Navy Surface Force in 2005. They superseded the Type 53H3 frigates. Only 2 ships, Manshan, which is numbered 525, and Wenzhou, numbered 526, were completed before production switched to the VLS-equipped improved Type 54A frigates, which we've already covered. The Type 54 has a stealthy hull design with sloped surfaces, radar-absorbent materials, and reduced superstructure clutter. The main anti-ship armaments was the YJ-83C skimming anti-ship cruise missile, which were deployed in 2 4-cell launchers. It deployed the HQ-7 SAMs, an improved version of the French Crotale, from the preceding Type H-53H3. The HQ-7 has a ready-to-fire 8-cell launcher with 16 missiles stored in an automatic reloader. Short-range defence was improved with 4 AK-630 CIWS turrets. A 100mm main gun, also based on a French design, was mounted on this vessel. The Type 53H3 is a class of Chinese frigates that entered service with the People's Liberation Army Navy Surface Force in the 1990s and 2000s. The class comprises 10 vessels, of which all remain in active service, except for 2 which have been sold to the Bangladesh Navy. They were the follow-on type to the Type 53H2G frigate class. In the 1980s, the plan, that's the PLA Navy, ordered Shanghai-based Hongdong shipyard to build a replacement for the Type 53K air defence frigate. The new class was based on the Type 53H2 frigate and designated Type 53H2G. Development was carried out under Project 055, or at least that was the project name. The Type 53H2G was slightly larger than the Type 53H2 and equipped with the HQ-61B surface-to-air missiles, SAMs. However, the HQ-61 missiles proved unsatisfactory and the class was quickly superseded by the Type 53H3, which was an improved Type 53H2G equipped with the HQ-7 SAMs, which is a more advanced version. The HQ-7 was a Chinese-produced version of the French R330C Crotale. 10 Type 53H3s were produced between 1996 and 2005, 8 which remain in service, although the oldest, Jiangxing, may have been decommissioned in 2025, as some sources do not include this frigate. Now let's move on to corvettes. The PLA Navy has 50 corvettes, of which the oldest vessel was commissioned in 2014. As with the other classes of naval vessels in the PLA Navy, this is once again a very young force, or a very new navy. The Type 56 corvette is a class of littoral combat-oriented corvettes. Within the PLA Navy, it's designated as a light frigate. This is deployed by the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy. They replaced older coastal patrol craft and some of the Type 53H frigates. The first Type 56 entered service in March 2013, and 22 ships were built for active service. An anti-submarine warfare ASW variant, commonly known as the Type 56A, also entered service from 2014 onwards, of which 50 ships were built. Between mid-2021 and January 2023, the plan, that's the PLA Navy, transferred all 22 original Type 56 corvettes to the Chinese Coast Guard, while retaining the 50 Type 56As, which are specifically ASW corvettes. The pennant numbers for the Type 56 class were thus deleted, while the pennant numbers for the first 20 ships of the Type 56A were altered from their previous 500 series to a new 600 series. The subsequent 30 ships of the Type 56A variant received pennant numbers also in the 600 series from the start. Let's now move on to submarines. The PLA started building its ballistic missile submarines in 2008, when the Type 32 was initially laid down. The initial submarine was not nuclear powered. The initial Type 32 submarine was really only a test bed. This submarine, called 201, or which I'll call 201 submarine, is a Chinese diesel-electric auxiliary submarine. It was used to test systems and technologies, including testing the launching of ballistic missile systems, SLBMs, 201 submarine is the sole member of its class designated Type 32. Submarine 201 was commissioned into the People's Liberation Army Navy in 2012. The previous SLBM testbed, a Gulf-class submarine, Type 31, was subsequently decommissioned in 2013. This submarine participated in testing the JL-2 SLBM, that's a ballistic missile. Submarine 201 made the first 3 JL-3 test launches starting in 2018. The Chinese nuclear submarine program, which is called 09 Project, was authorized by the Central Military Commission and Mao Zedong in July 1958. In October 1959, Mao ordered the program to proceed after the Soviets refused to assist him. Work was slowed by the Great Leap Forward and the nuclear weapons program, which had priority and used similar resources. The submarine program was postponed in March 1963 and resumed in March 1965 after China's first nuclear weapons test. Research on foreign civil nuclear marine propulsion systems continued during this pause. A loop-based nuclear reactor was finally selected over a more powerful but also more complex integrated design in July 1965. It most resembled the reactor used by the Japanese Mutsu. The initial SSN, that's nuclear submarine, was not considered a success, and interest was minimal until 1994, when a new generation of attack submarines were designed, which was the Type 93. The first 2 were a significant improvement, but not comparable with Western attack submarines. They were too noisy, although they were still effective in a defensive posture. The last 3, the Type 93, were the first quiet attack submarines built, making them a more lethal offensive threat. The PLA Navy is currently building the Type 93B. The Type 91 submarine is a first-generation nuclear-powered attack submarine produced in China. It was the People's Liberation Army Navy first nuclear submarine and the first indigenously produced nuclear attack submarine in Asia. The program was expedited by designing the building of the first Type 91 and the prototype reactor simultaneously. The earlier vessels experienced significant issues, but the last 3, hulls 403, 404 and 405, were completed to a modified design with longer hulls and more powerful reactors. The last Type 91 was launched in 1990. The Type 91 has a teardrop hull. It was acoustically loud as Soviet nuclear submarines of the late 1950s and 1960s, and was mainly suitable for an anti-surface role. By 1970 standards, the boats were slow, noisy, and had poor sensors. The Type 93 submarine is a class of nuclear-powered attack submarines constructed by the People's Republic of China for the People's Liberation Army Navy. The first generation of Chinese nuclear submarines, the Type 91 attack and the Type 92 ballistic missile submarines, SSBNs, were costly and not so successful considering their capability. Support for new nuclear submarines emerged in 1994 under Jiang Zemin after the 1993 Zhuhai incident and continued tensions with Taiwan. Reportedly, Russian experts contributed to the Type 93 designs. The first Type 93 submarine was laid down in 1994 and commissioned in 2006. The first 2 submarines had unsatisfactory speed and were still noisy. The first 4 Type 93A submarines, commissioned from 2015 and 2018, introduced longer streamline sails for greater speeds. The first 2 Type 93As were also relatively quieter by incorporating acoustic dampening technology developed from Kilo-class submarines purchased from Russia. The last 2 Type 93As may have been further improved by using acoustic dampening mounts derived from later Russian technology, possibly making them China's first quiet submarine. The Type 93B has pump jet propulsion. 4 have been launched between May 2022 and January 23, and the PLA Navy could have 3 of this class operational by 2025. Let's move on to conventional attack submarines. The PLA Navy has a reasonable focus on building up its conventional submarine force, with a host of different types being built in the last 30 years, the latter submarines being highly effective conventional attack submarines. The Kilo class submarine, or Project 636, are a group of diesel-electric attack submarines designed by the Rubin Design Bureau in the Soviet Union in the 1970s and built originally for the Soviet Navy. China purchased 10 Project 636 Kilo class submarines, first an order of 2, followed by a subsequent order of 8. The Type 35 submarine is a class of diesel-electric submarine for the People's Liberation Army Navy. The Type 35 is a heavily improved redesign of the older Type 33 submarine, which were built in China between 1962 and 1984. The second unit of the Type 35 class submarine, with a pennant number of 342, was built at Fuchang shipyard, and many problems were discovered during its trials. As a result, the Chinese Navy ordered the 701st Institute to perform a major redesign, which not only solved the problems but also increased the top speed by 40% to 18.3 knots. The redesigned boat was completed in June 1980 and finally entered Chinese service on December 24, 1982, with a new designation of Type 35A. In December 1983, the decision was made to stop the production of the new Type 33 class boat and replace it with a Type 35A. After the completion of the first Type 35A in 1982, the production of the Type 35 briefly halted until 1987, when the production restarted again and 3 more units were completed before the production series ended in 1990. The latest version of the Type 35 is the Type 35B. The first batch of 4 were completed between 2000 and 2003, and additional orders followed sometime later. Conning tower and certain portions of the hull were redesigned, with new structure similar to that of the Type 39 submarine. This type was capable of launching land attack cruise missiles from torpedo tubes. The Type 39A submarine is a class of diesel-electric submarine in the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy. It is China's first AIP-powered submarine. The Type 39A class is a successor to the Type 39 submarine. According to an early assessment by the US Naval Institute, the Type 39A class was primarily designed to be an anti-ship cruise missile platform capable of hiding submerged for a long period of time in difficult-to-access shallow littoral waters. However, another assessment by the US Navy included an open ocean capability which could be used beyond coastal waters. Also updated was its role within the Chinese naval fleet. As of August 2015, it is now considered to be a more traditional attack submarine with only a secondary ACSM role. The biggest difference between the Type 39B and the Type 39AG is the Type 39B has incorporated flank sonar arrays, which were subsequently retrofitted on the Type 39AG submarines and some earlier boats. This difference, however, is not readily observable because the flank array is installed at the lower portion of the hull. It was only in the early 2010s when a Type 39B built by Shanghai Changxi shipyard exposed in a berth when the first flank array of the Type 39B became publicised, thus distinguishing this type from the earlier Type 39AG that lacked the flank sonar. The Type 39B upgraded version was the fourth variant of the Type 39A and was first publicised in December 2013, with a modified hull and redesigned conning tower and extrusion at the root of the conning tower in both the bow and the stern direction, similar to that of the conning tower of the Virginia-class submarine. In addition, the bulge housing contained unknown sensors on board the Type 39B, and it was placed in the forward section of the top edge of the conning tower. There are 3 white lines at the top edge of the conning tower on both sides, presumably containing environmental sensors. The Type 39C was a new variant commissioned from 2022 onwards with redesigned stealth sail, first spotted in May 2021 in Wuhan. It has been noted that the redesigned stealth sail looks similar to the sails of the Swedish A26 Belkan-class submarine. However, there are some noticeable differences, such as the sail of the Type 39C having a less blended lower part and the fair water planes, that's the hydroplanes, being mounted very differently. Besides a redesigned sail, this variant also has a noticeably wider casting and the outer shape of the hatches appear to have been cut in the form of a square. The Type 39C fleet comprises 3 units commissioned to date, with another 5 under construction. The Type 39 submarine is a class of diesel-electric submarine of the People's Liberation Army Navy. The class is the first diesel-electric submarine to be made in China and also the first Chinese-made diesel-electric submarine to use the teardrop hull shape. Altogether, 13 vessels were completed to the Type 39 design between 1999 and 2006, with 3 variants of the type developed. This class has 3 versions. The original Type 39 version consists of only the prototype submarine commissioned in 1999 and bearing the hull number Changqing 320. Just to note, this class does not seem to be a copy of the Type 39A, B and C, which we've just covered prior to this, and should be viewed as a separate class of submarine, smaller class of submarine. The second variant of the Type 39 was the Type 39G, which was the first fully operational submarine of this class. There are 5 vessels commissioned between 2001 and 2004. The final variant of the submarine, the Type 39G1, was an improved version of the Type 39G, with 7 vessels commissioned between 2003 and 2006. I have to point out the build-out of the submarine force in the PLA Navy has been as impressive as the rest of the Navy. While the rate has slowed since 2012, the PLA Navy has a significant number of submarines being still built, so I would expect the build rate to still remain unusually high. And the build rate in 2012 was quite extreme, at 45,000 tonnes of submarines built. And so we come to a close of my episode 23 of my equipment series of videos, in this case covering the PLA Navy, in this case part 2 of this series covering specifically frigates, corvettes and submarines. After I complete this series, I'll be looking at how these naval vessels are expected to fight. Alle guten Dinge, kommen zu einem Ende.